I'm Jesse Crossan, and the other day I was fortunate enough to sit down with Isaiah Sadowski, who's currently on the run, probably in a non-extradition country, claiming that he was mistreated by the police department and by the prosecution in Kansas. Now, his story is kind of wild because he admits his guilt. He says that, yes, I was there and yes, I did this, but this is why it's unfair. And he's going to go into the details, but I was really interested because I've never had somebody who was on the run so interested in telling their story and both being accountable, but also talking about why they believe they can't go back because it's not in their best interest or even the best interest of the public. Isaiah Sadowski, let's start from the beginning.
I'm here because I believe that I am being charged and prosecuted for a crime that I did not commit, and I think the evidence supports that. And you might say, well, then just take it to trial and let the justice system do what the justice system does. But unfortunately, I'm $300,000 into this. I've had 3 defense attorneys that have given up on me. And I just recently spoke with another defense attorney who said, listen, I don't think that you'd be found guilty of that crime if it's presented at all in a trial situation. So I'm here to figure out what my next steps are and avoid 20 years of prison and try and save my life.
So to be clear, you are not in compliance with the court's orders, right?
Completely. I am no longer in America. I'm trying to figure out what the next steps are here because there was no legal path forward, right? I had this defense attorney. He's a nationally reclaimed defense attorney, 300 plus 5-star reviews on Google, super lawyers, top 100 trial lawyers, all this stuff. And when I first retained him, he said, listen, here's the game plan. I've seen the case file. He met my parents, he told my parents the game plan, and it sounded really, really good. And then 2 months later, he just completely gave up on me. And at that point, I was $300,000 in. We're 2 weeks away from trial. This defense attorney is telling me, hey, let's just walk in there tomorrow and plead guilty and hope for the best. And I don't see how that helps anybody. And so, especially when you're hundreds of thousands of dollars into this and you've given me a game plan and you've met my family and you've said the exact words to me, Isaiah, you have a better case than even you think that you have.
So take us back to the beginning. What was the date of the alleged crime?
The date of the car accident was December 27th, 2021. It was 8:32 p.m. I had just found out that my fiance was cheating on me over Christmas. And so it being the 27th of December, I'll be honest, I don't remember much of the day, if any of the day at all. So what I do know from the day is pieced together from news articles or from what people have told me, things of that nature. But I was still reeling from finding out that I was being cheated on. I was 20 years old at the time. And so as a 20-year-old, you're cheated by a girl that you're engaged to, and it's the end of the world, right? The world's crashing down on you. This is the end of it all, right? And so that night I went, I drank, and I'm an open book. I'll just be completely honest. And I was involved in a car accident, and I was subsequently charged with murder. When my initial defense attorney, he's known as the best DUI defense attorney in the state, said, you should take this to trial, but just not with me. I'm the best DUI guy in the state. I'm not the best guy for a murder trial, right? And so he said, go out.
You said you were involved in a car accident. Did you cause the car accident while you were inebriated?
I believe that both cars caused the car accident. Both cars ran a light.
Okay. But if one light is green and one light is red, and I assume somebody got T-boned?
Yeah, so the light that the other person was coming from was amber, 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 just turned red. And then my light was solid red, but I was braking leading up to it. And so we both ran a red light.
So you get out on this $250,000 bond, you meet with your lawyer, you're going forward. And there was also an issue of either a civil suit or a civil settlement. How did that happen?
Yeah, so when the car accident first happened in January, so the car accident happened December 27th, right? They charged me February 4th. So there was a month in between where I was able to go and interview all these different attorneys. And the attorney that I settled with was this best DUI guy. And he reached out to the prosecutor and reached out to an attorney that the victim's family had hired. And they basically said, hey, we want to see a civil settlement. And then they said, we want X amount of dollars for the civil settlement. And my attorney, said, hey, that's a lot of money. And over the next 6 months, we spent time trying to make that civil settlement possible. And if you go and look at it, it's June 17th, the civil settlement got ratified, and there's a significant sum of money that went to the family.
Because normally in cases you have basically the closure of the criminal settlement or the criminal case, and then a civil suit, is kind of followed by that. It's unusual unless one is going to kind of like obviate the need for the other. Like I've seen a lot of civil settlements where the money changes hands and then the criminal charges are dropped because they're considered no longer credible or there's some other factor. So was that kind of your explanation or your expectation that if there was a civil settlement, the criminal charges would be dropped?
Yeah, not dropped. I want to be very careful about this. I got out of jail February 18th of 2022, and I was able to see my attorney 3 or 4 days later. And when I went to his office and when I saw him, he explained to me that if this sum of money was hit, the prosecution and the victim's family both understood that I'm 20 years old, I'm an Airbnb host, I fix and flip houses, I wasn't at a party, and so they were going to be willing to say, look, we understand, we're going to drop this down to vehicular homicide, which is a misdemeanor, you'll do a year in jail, and that will kind of be the end of that. And as a 20-year-old, a year in jail sounded crazy, but it's okay, a year in jail, sure. And so we came to the civil agreement, and June 18th, the day after the civil suit was ratified and the money was wired to them, that was when the prosecution told my defense attorney, hey, we're not even going to look for the maximum sentence of 10 and a half years. We're going to look to double the maximum sentence and give him 20 and a half years. This was actually when I hired the second defense attorney, and this guy is known as the best defense attorney in Johnson County, Kansas, which is where I'm from. And so I hire this guy, and he says that he's going to exhaust all the options, but it could be best to go to mediation first, right? And I heard that they want to go up and they want to find some reason to give me 20 and a half years, but okay, let's go to mediation, let's talk to them, right? As a 20-year-old, you're very impulsive and very quick to say, okay, they're trying to take my life away from me, we have to go and attack back. I don't even want to go and mediate. I just want to go to trial. But sure, let's go to mediation. So we go to mediation, and mediation wasn't for another 6 to 8 months. Mediation wasn't until, I believe it was April of 2023. And so it's maybe August of 2022 at this point, and I had just gotten off of house arrest, and I just started going to AA meetings, and then I started leading AA meetings, and then I started taking AA meetings to inpatient and outpatient rehab centers. We go to mediation, and the prosecution refused to meet with me, refused to read the mediation statement, refused to meet any of the letters of character, refused to do anything. They went in there, they said, we're looking to double his sentence no matter what, and then they left. And that was when the second defense attorney dropped out.
But you said there were flimsy words that were strung together. What were those words?
If you go, what does the document say? The document says that on November 1st of 2022, I was driving this girl around, speeding while on Snapchat, I think, and she said that I was drunk. And it's interesting because on November 1st of 2021, I apologize, November 1st of 2021, I was driving this girl around drunk and on Snapchat or whatever. And I went back and I looked through my Google Photos, and I was with my best friend all day that day. And we had, between the two of us, I think it's 90-something pictures and videos of us together that day. We were playing basketball. We were getting ice cream. We were 35, 40 minutes away from this girl's apartment. We were nowhere near her until 11:30 p.m. And so the case that the police would have to make is that 11:30 p.m., I would have had to driven 40 minutes before midnight to pick this girl up, somehow in those 40 minutes of driving, get drunk, and then drive around with her drunk. And that's not possible.
Scrambling, I mean, it sounds like you're a survivor. You've kind of like scrambled to make things happen, but it also sounds like you came from some pretty significant privilege. The fact that your family or you could spend $300,000 on lawyers, do a 7-figure settlement, come up with this money. How do you feel like that played into either your experience and your kind of like attitude coming into this, as well as the way you were treated by the prosecutor?
I think that there's so many interesting parts to that, because coming into the judicial process, I was told over and over. I remember the days leading up to my charging in February of 2022. Everybody was saying, Isaiah, you were a Blue Valley kid. You're from the community. You're an Airbnb host. You bring value to Kansas City. There's no reason why they would charge you with murder. There's no reason that they wouldn't give you a good plea deal. You're better for the community out in the community than you would be in a box. And I heard that, and I was like, yeah, but still, what if the worst thing happens? And then the worst thing did happen. And I was certainly at the time really naive about it. I would see these guys, perhaps one by the name of Secondchancer on TikTok, and I would think to myself, man, if he's complaining about the justice system, maybe don't get involved in the justice system, right? But then you do get involved with the justice system, and the prosecutors are able to act with discretion, right? If the law was black and white, do not kill, or do not do this, or you will receive 5 years in prison. And the law, the police officer says that I did this, right? And the law is black and white, and I go, and everybody receives 5 years in prison, right? Okay, maybe I don't think that it's fair, but at least everybody receives this, right? If the law was black and white, it wouldn't matter what attorney that you hired, right? It wouldn't matter, here's 5 different legal theories that we could test out, right? And so you don't realize these things until you're actually involved in the justice system. And as somebody that never had exposure to it growing up in upper middle class society, it's very interesting, right? And then the prosecutor in my case grew up in, I don't want to say lower class, but it was certainly lower middle class, in the same county, but lower middle class and in a duplex. And that's something that I never had to experience. And I think that there was a degree of jealousy there, because you have this 19-year-old kid with Airbnb selling houses, driving around this 50th anniversary Camaro, right? And you weren't doing that at 19. You were struggling for your law degree, trying to get scholarships, trying to do this and that. Lower middle income family that's making ends meet, doing their best, where I never really had to worry about that. And it's like, well, let's get him, right? Let's prove to him that he's not all that because he comes from this privileged area or this privileged group.
One of the things, though, you shared with me, and I don't know whether you want to share the specifics, you shared a diagnosis with me that's generally associated with a tremendous amount of trauma. So even if you did grow up in a privileged household as far as economics, that doesn't mean you really had a privileged life as far as safety or emotional safety or experience. Is there anything in there that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder at the age of 18. A lot of my friends thought that I had it when I was going through high school, and there was certainly different elements of, I don't want to say trauma. Looking back at it, when I was maybe 16, 17 years old, I was so naive, because as a 17, 18-year-old, you think you know everything about the world, right? And as a 22-year-old now, man, I knew nothing. And so at the time, I would have called them traumatic experiences, and they certainly weren't. But I went to this therapist, and she gave me this diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And I went, okay, that makes sense. And I start going to therapy every week, once, perhaps twice a week, some weeks, and working through things. And I've also had 13 medically diagnosed concussions. And that's not you bonk your head and, oh, it really hurts, right? That's like something happens, you go to a doctor and you receive the actual medical diagnosis for the concussion, right? And so between those two things, there was always an element, and the fact that I was just so young and so naive, there was certainly so much emotional instability there. I don't actually think that I went through anything too traumatic. I mean, my mom lived in a scary world. She still does, certainly, where everybody is out to get her all the time. But she's extremely intelligent. I would say that my mom is narcissistic, but to be a narcissist, you have to be extremely intelligent, right? And so she, as a kid, I share this example with people and they think I'm crazy. But as a kid, she'd give me the MapQuest directions when we lived in Colorado. And she'd say, you need to call out the turns, 500 feet here, half a mile here. You need to know all the streets. Because if you know all the streets and you know all your directions, then you could be in Argentina and you would never get lost because you know all the streets. You were able to pick up on it. And so we'd be driving around and I'd say, Mom, this is the exit for E470 right here. We have to get off here, 0.3 miles, 500 feet. Mom, you're going to miss it. And I'd start freaking out because she missed it. And whenever you miss something, there would be consequences for it, right? And you'd miss it and she'd go, oh, no, don't worry about it. There's actually a shortcut. It's 1.5 minutes faster if we take off this way because there's a little bit less traffic at this time of day. But if you miss it, then you're in big trouble. But also, let's say that there was a white car, a Nissan Altima, that she had seen 5 exits back, and then she saw it again. Are those people following us? Those people are following us. We need to get off the highway right now. And Mom, those people aren't following us. And she'd say, well, the license plate is this, and it ends in 453. And I remember when we passed him, his license plate ended in 453, and now he's back, and so he's following us. We need to get off the highway right now. And so it would go 0 to 100 really quickly. And you can't argue with her because you're, 8, 9, 10 years old? I don't know what numbers the license plate ended in. And so it was an interesting environment to be brought up in, but I'm thankful for it because now when I am here, the streets of Argentina, I at least never get lost. I always know where I am.
How do you see this playing out? Like, what is your next step? Are you going to stay in a 4-room apartment in whatever country you're in for the rest of your life? Are you going to wait for them to budge, or are you going to come back and give a counteroffer? Like, how do you see this happening?
Honestly, I don't know. That's the tricky thing about it is, let's say that I went out and hired another defense attorney. Well, what's to stop him from doing the exact same thing, right? And so you almost don't even believe in the law anymore. And so the only chance that I even really see is a new district attorney coming in and saying, hey, this doesn't seem right. Now we've got this kid in Belize and he's going on these podcasts and he's talking to different people and it's not the best look for us. Let's just work something out while you're there, come back and you serve a 4-year sentence. And I'd say, okay, I'll come back and do that, right? And that's all that they needed to do at mediation was say, okay, we accept the maximum amount of time on an involuntary manslaughter. But that's the only outcome that I even see at this point. But then what would a judge do, right? Would a judge throw that plea agreement out? And so am I just stuck in this permanent state of limbo? Should I get a new defense attorney? What should I do? All I know how to do is tell people the truth and pray. I think that God aligns himself with the truth. And so if that's all that I can do, then that's all that I can do. I'm not sure.
As somebody who's been in a place of limbo and not knowing what the future would look like, or not knowing if I was ever going to make it out of prison, that's a horrible place to be. The mental health aspect of being in a place where you feel so powerless and relying entirely on outside things is rough. So my heart goes out to you for that one. But I do hope there's a way that you can find to be accountable and make amends for the things you've done. And I agree that sticking you in prison for 20 years or 30 years doesn't make any sense. That doesn't accomplish anything for anybody. And I understand the hurt of the family. And that's one of the things I've always reckoned with myself of, what right do I have to do, for the role that I played in this? But at the same time, it's like, how can you step up and be accountable? And it sounds like you're willing to do that. So I do hope there's some kind of positive revolution for this, but I don't know what it looks like. And you don't know what it looks like.
I will say this, the justice system is not creative, right? And there were a bunch of creative solutions that I came up with that were immediately just shot down. One thing that I would love to do is correction officers only make $18 an hour in Kansas. And a lot of the correction facilities are 1-2 hours away from the nearest big town. And so you've got these people living in really remote areas making almost no money. And one of the things that I offered to do for free, go work an overnight shift at one of the correction facilities and completely for free, and attribute to their vacancy problem. They have a 25% vacancy rate. And so the justice system needs to get more creative and more innovative with the way that they're doing things. And I love a lot of the stuff that you're doing with Secondchancer Foundation because you are spearheading that a bit.